On this episode of the Second Swing Thoughts podcast, we have two special guests. We have Larry Bobka joining to talk about his Proto Irons, new iron model designed by Larry, one of our club fitters. And we also have Kevin Kraft joining just to talk a little bit about wedge fitting. We've gotten some questions about that, how Second Swing goes through a wedge fitting and what that looks like in our Tour Van Bays. So we could talk about that with Kevin as well. So two great guests on this episode of the Second Swing Thoughts podcast. Hey golfers, and welcome into another episode of Second Swing Thoughts. Drew Mahowald here, Sean Bauer over there. Very eventful show. We had the PGA Tour season wrap up, and we also have two special guests here today.
Yeah, busy week in golf, kind of the finale for two of the big leagues. You know, you had the LIV Golf Team Championship as well. But yeah, the PGA Tour, obviously a big-time first winner there. And then, we're getting closer and closer to the Ryder Cup, and so the captain's picks will be announced this week. We got a brand new putter, a new wedge that hit the market. So really exciting week here. And obviously Kevin and Larry can never have too much of either of them. Larry's irons are sweet looking. Guy knows more about golf clubs and golf than probably anyone I've ever met. And then Kevin talking, wedge fitting and kind of the uniqueness of it. Wedges are obviously a very big field club, and here you are getting fit to them in a bay. So how do we go about that process? Really good insights from Kevin there. But, let's get into the turn here, and let's start off with Tommy Fleetwood.
Yeah.
First PGA Tour win, winning the Tour Championship, winning the FedEx Cup. It's a pretty good first tournament to win. Big cash payout. Obviously, one of the marquee events of the PGA Tour season, the marquee event of the playoffs. And he played fantastic. And really, other than a couple times on Sunday, I think there was he bogeyed, Cantley birdied to get within one, but then Cantley gave right back. He pretty much was comfortably ahead most of the day.
Yeah, it was. I'm sure anybody watching had a similar feeling pop up in their gut, in their brain as Fleetwood was holding that lead down the stretch. We've seen this movie before. How is it going to unfold this time? But no, I think what's impressive about Fleetwood, I think he's deserved to win a tournament for a long time. He finally got to stay on top of the leaderboard through 72 holes this time, but he doesn't really have a weakness in his game. He's pretty strong throughout the different facets of golf. Isn't the longest hitter, but hits it pretty straight for the most part. Really good iron play, and so and then this week the putter got hot for him in a big way, and so I believe he was doubled up the next best player in terms of strokes gained. Yeah. So I thought I saw it was 67 of 75 inside 15 feet, which is an unbelievable thing to think about. Yeah. Inside 15 feet, 67 for 75.
It's pretty good.
That is, it's really difficult to, wrap my brain around that. So that'll win you most tournaments, and he was right there and he never let up.
Yeah, really cool win for him. I think one of my favorite parts of the whole thing was after he had won, seeing Justin Rose. Yeah. Like seeing a friend, a guy who had just beat him a couple weeks ago, celebrated almost as hard as Tommy. Kind of shows you the respect that Fleetwood has out there among players. You saw some of the biggest names tweeting about him: LeBron James, Caitlin Clark, Tiger Woods sent out a congratulatory tweet. That's the second tweet he's sent out this year. The other one being for Rory McIlroy finishing the career Grand Slam, just publicly congratulating other players. So very cool. It was really cool to see him, how much the crowd adored him too, which is pretty interesting because we're a month out from Tommy Fleetwood being one of the enemies, if you're an American, because he's going to be on the European team, and that European team keeps getting scarier and scarier. But and then to top it off, he's got one of the coolest what's in the bags, I think.
Yeah, it's you go through. He was one of the first players to adopt the mini driver. One of the first, I guess, bigger names, right? I think that was now 2 or maybe 3 years ago where he finally put one in the bag, and it's been in there since. He had been playing the Burner Mini, which was at least a couple years old now, and then transitioned to the R7 Quad when that was released earlier this year, and it's. He's been, I don't want to say a poster boy for it, but he has stuck with it the entire time, and he's finally seen some results there. Obviously, a trustworthy club off the tee for him, but he will use it off the turf as well.
Yeah, and I think I saw, he says he kind of has a pretty straight ball flight with his driver, and so he kind of uses that mini driver when he needs to play a certain specific shot. So interesting there. He plays the QI35 dot model, so the tour head there and the driver. Then goes from mini driver to a QI35 5 wood, and then goes back a generation to QI10 playing a 9 wood, which, you saw some of those out at like the U.S. Open when you really wanted to land it, come in high, steep attack angle with some spin. But you don't see a lot of them throughout the tour season.
Yeah.
So really cool that he has that. And then he, just like Scotty Scheffler, he plays the P7 TWs, which are, a traditional muscleback blade. You hear from Larry later on in the show. He kind of talks about that too, and talks about Tommy having what he calls, the modern golf bag with, a lot of woods.
Yep.
And then just kind of has his scoring clubs a little more for the field. And then he, plays a couple different TaylorMade wedges, high toe 4, and then the MG Protos, which I believe are pretty similar to their MG5.
Yeah.
They've been out a little bit here on tour, and then he plays the Spider Tour Black putter there. And then another unique thing is he plays the TP5X picks.
Yes. He also has his own unique alignment aids on the putter.
Yeah.
I believe it's actually a Sharpie that's drawn on there. So, clearly a guy kind of like Rose in a sense where they've, they think outside the box a little bit with their equipment. But it works for him clearly. So it's good to see him win. He was he was clearly the guy, you think of that was the best player, the best resume, but didn't quite have the PGA Tour win. And obviously that's changed now. Yeah,
and see, it was one of those things where I was kind of rooting for him. I wanted it to be a good finish more than anything, but there was part of me that was just rooting for Tommy Fleetwood. And then I had my brother, and he was like, "No, I can't root for him. I only root for USA this time of year." And I was like, "I get it, the Ryder Cup." And that's going to lead us into our next topic, Ryder Cup captain's picks. Obviously, there's 6 auto qualifiers for the U.S. Keegan Bradley will announce his 6 captain's picks this week. Now, we are recording this before he announces them, so Drew and I are each just going to give our prediction on his 6 captain's picks. So I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so this is, we might end up being with the same guys here, but so I'm just going to go through again who's already in, right? So for the Team U.S., you got Scotty Scheffler. This is an order of the points. Scotty Scheffler, J.J. Spahn, Xander Schauffele, Russell Henley, Harris English, and Bryson DeChambeau, which again is crazy given that he is really only playing in the majors as far as events that count for the points. So the rest of the lineup here, I think he's gonna pick himself. So number 1 is gonna be Keegan Bradley. I think he's gonna pick himself. I think he's just playing too good, and I think it's one of those where I think there's enough guys either already on the team or kind of talking to him that are saying you're not putting the best team forward if you're not on the squad. So I think he's in a tough spot where if US ends up losing this, he's going to get a ton of blame. But in reality, I think we could maybe talk about the decision to have him be the captain in the first place. But anyway, Keegan Bradley's going to pick himself. We're going to go with Justin Thomas. Pretty good resume. Was 1 spot away from the auto qualifier, so we're going to go. I think he's going to get in. I think you have to pick Ben Griffin. He's been too consistent there here in 2025. Has an all-around game. It would be certainly a Ryder Cup rookie, but I think he could fare very well. Patrick Cantlay also. I think strong finish this week. Solid record in the match play events, Ryder Cup, etc. I'm going to go Cameron Young. He's got a game for it. And then lastly here, this is going to maybe be a shock, but Brian Harman. I'm going Brian Harman.
That is an interesting
So I'm leaving off, of the big names here, I'm leaving off Sam Burns. And I'm leaving off, in terms of points, Andrew Novak was up there. Maverick McNeely was up there.
Colin Morikawa.
Colin Morikawa was up there. I'm leaving all those guys off. And I think there's something about Harman that I know it's not a great fit for Bethpage Black, given the distance, given what that course demands. But I think he has an element of his game that fits really well with match play. Hits a lot of fairways. He's going to keep the ball in play. He could be a really good teammate for a good complementary teammate for a lot of the other guys on the squad.
Interesting. That one really caught me off. I kind of am stuck in this point where who I think Keegan should pick and who I think he's going to pick.
Yeah.
Right? Because if it's who he should pick,
I don't think he's going to pick Brian Harman. I'll put that out there now, but I think it would be
who he should pick.
Yeah, I think if it was me making the picks, I think Harman would be a sneaky good one.
All right. So yeah. So to me, it should. I think JT, Cantlay. I think those two are absolute locks.
Okay.
JT, like you said, he was one spot out of the automatic 6. He's played well at Ryder Cups. Even though 2 years ago he wasn't in great form, he still played solid over there. He just happened to be paired with Spieth, who sprayed the ball all over, right? And I think Cantlay, his Ryder Cup success, his partnership with someone like Xander Schauffele, who's not coming in great form.
Sure.
And he played pretty well at the Tour Championship. He just kind of faded down the stretch there. But I think those two are locks. So I think both they should, and I think they will. Now, who I think should be on there, I think Ben Griffin should be on there. I think Cam Young should be on there. I think Sam Burns should be on there. And I think Keegan Bradley should be on there.
Okay.
But 5 of those 6 are going to make it. But I have a feeling Ben Griffin is going to get left off, and Colin Morikawa is going to be on.
Okay. And again, I wouldn't be upset about that. I mean, and all these guys really are playing good enough golf, but I think Morikawa might be the exception there, where his form lately
he hasn't been playing well, but
it's not great. The putter especially has been very inconsistent.
But I was seeing Michael Kim talking on X about it, and he because he brought up that he didn't understand why everyone's so mad about Morikawa, and he's like, I think Ben Griffin's going to make it, but I don't know why everyone doesn't think Colin should be on it. And he was saying the Bethpage is going to be a second shot course with some long irons, and he says that Colin is one of the best in the world. He's a great teammate, which we don't get to see. We don't know how they interact and how they get along with each other. And I mean, he still is up there. Usually, you go look at strokes gained, tee to green. A lot of times, he's still pretty good.
Yeah,
but I think Ben Griffin's gonna be the odd man out, which I think if Keegan wasn't going to play, I think having 2 or 3 rookies would be fine. But if he's playing, I think he's going to want to limit the rookies, just so that when he's out there, it's these guys have been here, they've done that. I don't need to
I think I'm with you that JT and Cantlay seem to be the locks.
Yeah.
I think from there's a little bit of question with the rest of the squad. I'm much more, again, and we don't know how much experience matters in Ryder Cups. We don't know how much the teammate thing matters either. It is worth noting that Ben Griffin won a team event this year in a similar format, right?
I'll be pretty disappointed if Ben's not on the team. I think he's a guy who's played well throughout the year. He has a win. He competed at the Memorial. He just seemed to show up, and he's got a great short game. He just seems like the kind of a guy who's going to have that little, because you kind of need those bulldogs, right? Those guys that are just going to grind, It's like Kevin Kisner, even though he never played in a Ryder Cup, he played in the President's Cup. He was such great match play because he would grind out a par from nowhere, and and they would just mess with the other team's head. And Cantlay, you have to put Cantlay in.
The one thing I'll say is I really think Cameron Young should be on the team too. 100%. I feel pretty strongly about that.
If he's not,
he's from New York. He's going to have even more of a hometown crowd to him. Now that he's kind of got over the hump with the win, similar to Fleetwood there, it seems like in his game again is going to be really well suited there. I think he's got to be on.
He doesn't show a ton of personality out on the golf course, but I feel like the Ryder Cup is an area where he just feels like he's just ready to explode. And I think being in New York, I would love to see Chris Goddard get a chance just because he can bomb the ball.
Yeah,
and it's
fun.
A big ballpark, and he's also I think a New Jersey guy. But I think he's relying too much on a recent string where some of these other guys have been playing good for a while.
Yeah, there's a better body of work for all these
we shall see if let us know what you guys think about the picks. If obviously they've probably been announced by the time you're listening or watching this. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. But before we get to our main interviews, a couple quick product releases.
Yes.
L.A.B came out with a new putter, a very intriguing putter. It's the L.A.B Oz 1i, so it's the same model, but it's got the heel shaft on it instead of a center shaft.
Yeah, so this is intriguing. I mean, this is kind of the cool thing about L.A.B is they're finding new ways to present their technologies. And we tested it out, video up on YouTube. It performs the same way. It is absolutely lie angle balanced, so there is no qualms with that. They didn't sacrifice anything in that regard. The club head, the the shape and kind of where the weighting is a little different from the original Oz 1 and Oz 1i. I think there's some weight moved around to make room and make it possible to have this kind of no compromising heel shafted, lie angle balance design. So it's a little different, but in a way it also kind of works. I think there are some alignment lines that you can do there where it actually lines you up a little bit better than the original one. So, I think they did a great job with it. And I think there's, even in some of the comments I've seen in our video so far, people are like kind of doubting, like there's just no way it's actually lie angle balance without the shaft going into the center of the club head. It is. I can assure you that it is.
Yeah, it looks really nice. Obviously a little more traditional look, but still like the lie angle balance, zero torque.
Right. Plus, we know L.A.B. L.A.B's not going to just all of a sudden go away from releasing lie angle balance putters. Yeah. So they're not going to release something that wouldn't fulfill their principles there.
So go check out our swing report on that putter on our YouTube channel. Once again, that's the L.A.B Oz 1i HS. You can also schedule fitting, go test them out in our stores as well. And then the other launch happening on Tuesday was the Cleveland CBZ.
Yes.
Obviously, Cleveland's had a lot of success with that CBX lineup. It's kind of more of a cavity back wedge, a little more forgiveness, but now they've added the Z alloy, the same face that you find in their RTZ wedges, which have been so successful. I personally believe more people should be playing wedges like this, especially in your gap and even into your sand wedge. Obviously, if you're a player like yourself where you're very good, the more traditional blade-like wedges make a lot more sense. But for the golfers who are in that 10 to 15 to 16 handicap, you have your 50, 80, or 60 more for around the green lob. If this is, obviously it depends what you're using it for, but I think just that little extra forgiveness and these things are sharp looking.
Yeah, the comment I'll add from Jake Montgomery in that video that we have on the YouTube channel as well is just he says he does a lot of these in that gap wedge range. The previous generations of CBX, that's where he says it's been really successful because it is players that, so often there's that question of, well, should I use my set gap wedge or should I use a traditional wedge? And this is kind of the perfect blend of both worlds there. And you do get the Z alloy material, you get all the technology that you would get out of RTZ just in a more friendly package. So I think they've done really well with this as well.
Yeah, so once again, those are you can go look online. We also have a YouTube video on those as well, and you can pre-order those today. So make sure to check that out. But let's get into the first of our two featured interviews. We got Mr. Larry Bobka joining us.
Yeah, he's got some new irons, and Larry is one. I mean, he's been around making clubs, building clubs for people for a long time. For people that don't know or don't remember, he was on the Titleist team when he built irons for Tiger Woods. The irons he ended up using for probably the most dominant stretch of golf ever. In the kind of 99 to 2000 years, those were designed by Larry, and obviously working with Tiger there. So the guy knows what he's doing, and these irons have a lot of those principles in there. So this is Larry talking about his new irons, the Bobka Protos. We now welcome on the Second Swing Thoughts podcast, Mr. Larry Bobka. Some call him Larry Legend. Master club fitter and club designer. Has been in the golf equipment space for a long time. I won't say the number of years.
44.
44. Okay, he's going to say the number of years.
I'm going to say 44.
You have some new irons.
I do.
Here in 2025. So, for those who don't know, Larry designed, you've designed clubs forever, but most recently you've released putters and a set of irons in the last few years under the Handmade Sticks umbrella. Now we got a new set of irons to talk about. So these are the Bobka Proto Irons.
Correct.
A player's kind of shallow cavity type iron. I guess, where did this come from? What was the inspiration here with these?
Well, the L.B ones were pretty much just straight muscle back blades. So in the world of golf these days, you don't have that many players playing muscle back blade. Well, except for the number one player in the world and the guy that won FedEx yesterday. So, so blades are still around in good players' hands. But, players like to see something that maybe is a little bit larger profile, a little bit more forgiving. It's going to launch a little higher in the air.
Yeah. So with these, obviously that was part of the build was maybe, expanding it to new golfers that maybe didn't want to play a muscleback blade.
Correct.
So is there like when you are designing an iron, the shape, the sizing, everything like that, are you looking at maybe a club that you're fitting that's maybe permanently on the market that you're trying to kind of emulate, or is this something that you purely just throw something on there that comes to your mind? You're not really taking inspiration from another club. Like, how does it go for you?
Well, you could always say, hey, we're just, this is from a scratch design. Well, it's an iron, right?
Right.
There's a lot of irons that look like a lot of other irons through the years. What I like to do is I'd like to get a golf club, first of all, that, from a flight standpoint, gets what we need. Especially now these days with TrackMan, it's very easy to do a prototype, put a shaft in it, hit it, and see what kind of flight you get. So was I trying to get flight similar maybe to ZX7, Ping Blueprint, Titleist T, kind of in between 100 and 150. But that sort of profile, that larger profile that flies up in the air, but yet still when you put it down at address, it doesn't look like, it doesn't look like, I like to call them user-friendly golf clubs.
Right.
And I think the other thing that hurts a little bit these days, and no disrespect to any other manufacturers, I think lofts have gotten a little crazy in irons. They've gotten very strong. And I think it's good to have a set of irons that is a player's type club. It's going to fly up in the air, but it's also going to spin, because spin is control. Mm-hmm. So that's where I kind of looked at. I kind of looked at those irons and said, hey, what can I do from my standpoint? What kind of look do I want? What kind of feel, sound, and kind of, hey, because that's what we're selling. I mean, that's, hey, I fit that every day, ZX7s and ZX7s and blueprints and, the Titleist T100s and, hey, let's make a golf club similar to that under the Handmade Sticks, my brand, and bring out a club, limited release and see what people think. And, I originally put Proto on there for the first set of clubs, and I'm like, well, I kind of like Proto. Let's just leave it there.
Yeah, it's a Proto. Yeah, I mean, at one time it was a Proto, so that's kind of where.
Right.
So you talked about the lofts.
Yep.
The L.B. ones, the previous iron that you designed, or the muscleback blade. I believe the 7-iron was 36 degrees with that in the standard.
36.
Is it the case with these?
This is 35.
35. Okay.
35, and it's also because it's a forged 1020 carbon steel, or 1025, excuse me.
Yeah.
It's very bendable. So if you want to bend them back to traditional lofts, you can. If you want to bend them even a degree stronger, that you can too. Match up with a 34 degree 7-iron. So it really fits in there where I figured 35 was I like that number, because you can either play it at 35, you can go a little weaker, or you can go a little stronger.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
I look at it and I'm kind of prototyping some other stuff, and I hit them the other day, and you're like, these lofts are getting so strong that if you don't have any speed and you don't have any spin, you can't keep the ball in the air.
Right, which is, I know that's a big component. It seems like every iron fitting that, you or any of our fitters do, that's one of the first pieces of conversation is, how is identifying how high the person hits the ball with their current irons.
Right.
And then when it comes to getting something new, it becomes about the loft and how much, because, this is a 35 degree 7-iron, which 35 degrees today is kind of a radically high amount of loft today.
Correct.
But you talk about 10, 15 years ago, that was a pretty standard number.
Yeah, it was radically low.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's yeah.
Yeah, and it just you watch players, and you have when I do the prototype sets, I put them together. I hit them. I have other people hit them, and we take them in. We take them in the bay versus the clubs that I kind of was inspired by to.
Sure.
And you sit there and you see the performance, and it's like, well, hey, this is launching a little higher and spinning a little higher, and everybody looks at me and go, oh, what are you going to change? I'm like, nothing. That's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
I want a golf club that people can hit. I mean, I look at my own golf game, okay? 65 years old now. Back's not the best. But, you start hitting the ball shorter. And here's the issue. If you start hitting the ball shorter with your driver, then everything kind of backs up. Okay, well, if I'm only driving at 230 or 240, I don't need a 7-iron that goes 180 yards.
Right.
Because what do I put in between my 7-iron and my driver?
Right.
Not much. Not much.
Yeah.
There's only 50 or 60 yards there to do it, and then I got to put a whole bunch of stuff behind it. So I just kind of look at it as like, hey, put a nice set of clubs in your bag, hit your driver, and have those specific distances that you're going to hit. And that's what matters, And unfortunately, golf's a game of ego, that everybody wants to stand there and nobody wants to stand on the tee box. That if you're hitting an 8-iron and I got to hit 7 or 6, that bothers a lot of people.
Right. So that's partly why, it seems like lofts have shifted so much stronger today. It's a distance game for a lot of the manufacturers. But so when it comes to the design of the club head, is there anything particular features wise that you are in particularly proud of, or you like the best? Like, what are you? Call out something that's kind of unique there that maybe the viewers won't know or won't see.
I like that it's got a fairly straight leading edge.
Okay.
That pretty much parallels the bottom score line. I like that look. When you look at that, when you also turn it over this way, you look at the sole, and the sole looks very good. The sole looks parallel to the leading edge.
Sure.
There's a little pull away. There's a little bit of material taken out of the heel.
Okay. Yep.
But otherwise, it's a good performing sole. I put a little more bounce on these than the L.B. ones had, just to make it a little bit easier, and just in case somebody wants to bend these a little bit stronger.
Got it.
The top line to me is a little bit, it's a little bit on the thicker side. But again, we're trying to make a very stable golf club.
Yep.
Even though, in the world of MOI, this is not going to be the highest golf club in the world, but it's a little bit more stable. It's got a lot of weight down low, a real chance for the ball to launch up in the air very easily. And it just, I just, my frustration sometimes when I'm in the fitting bay is working with customers and, hey, they're like my age or getting to be my age, and they were good players, and now the speed's starting to fall off, the spin's starting to fall off. And it's like, hey, I need a golf club that goes in the air.
Yep.
And that's kind of what I was thinking about when I had these, was just to go out and go, okay, hey, I know how the L.B. ones fly. Let's make a golf club that flies a little higher. Forged cavity backs, you got to say, are hot right now. Between ZX and TaylorMade's, cavity back and everything. So why not come out with a club that looks very modern, where LB1 was a golf club that looked very traditional?
Yeah, that's a good way to put and kind of separate the two, where it seemed like,
right.
And again, I think
we went from the 1960s to the 2000s.
Yeah, but I do think there's, in a really cool way, you've still incorporated a similar overall shape to the two.
Yeah.
Just in terms, like, at address, I think the shape itself is still pretty similar, but obviously there's the different sizing of the club head and stuff. So I guess, and sort of wrapping up here too, just we've talked about features, where the iron came from, and you've hinted a little bit too at kind of the types of players that might benefit the most. But I guess if you were to kind of summarize the golfers that the Bobka Proto Irons are best suited for, being the person that actually designed them, what would you say?
Probably, I would like to say scratch to aspiring players.
Okay.
And aspiring players to me can be a 5 handicap trying to become a 0.
Sure.
A 10 trying to be a 5, a 15 to trying to be a 10. Anybody that's looking for an iron that's got more consistent ball flight, that's going to spin up in the air, that they can control their distance. Because what do we spend all day long in a bay? What have I spent my entire career doing? is trying to help people get the left to right dispersion down and the front to back dispersion down. Okay. That's why I made this golf club, to help people do that. And if I can start doing that, and if I can chip and putt, I can play pretty darn good golf, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because ultimately at the end of the day, you know, your drive set it up, your iron play gets you on the green, and then, you know, then the putter's got to do the work.
Right.
But you want to be consistent. I mean, the one thing that has killed me through the years, and, you know, having worked for Titleist and Wilson and hit a lot of golf clubs in my own game, especially, you know, the ball changed in 2000,
right,
to spin away from the golf ball, trying to find irons that flight well. Okay. I don't care if they're the fanciest, the best. That's why so many people walk in the bay and go, "Hey, I want to come in and get these," and all of a sudden they walk out the door with something else, and they're like, "Oh man, these are great.
Right.
I didn't even think about these." Well, yeah, but you didn't know your character. You don't know your launch conditions.
Yeah, you don't have any numbers or
you don't
any
know
way
what
to,
you don't. You don't know what you don't know. So
yeah.
I mean, to me, it's just an iron. It's just another iron in the family of my designs to just be out there, look at it, and say, hey, you know, very traditional golf club. Here's a more modern club. This one looks easier to hit. This one is.
Yeah.
The new one is easier to hit.
Yeah, that's. I'm personally intrigued. I have a set of the L.B. ones.
Yep.
I've enjoyed hitting those, and so I'm personally intrigued to give these a run myself, just to see, see the flight, the consistency, the feel, everything for myself too.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because I kind of have a combo set. I have those in my mid irons, and I still have LB ones in my short irons.
I was going to ask, yeah.
You know, so the world, you know, and there's so many combo. You know, you look at so many bags now. I mean, look at Tommy Fleetwood's bag yesterday.
Right.
You know, driver, mini driver, 5 wood, 9 wood, 5 iron through 4 wedges.
Yep.
I mean, talk about the modern setup of golf clubs, other than he's got, you know, his 5 iron through 9
He's got
iron.
muscle back blades.
Or blades, or
Yep.
muscle back blades. You know, but you look at Scotty Scheffler's, same way. But then the other side, okay, we got the wedges there, but what do we do at the top end? Where do we get the flight at the top end?
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of fun to play around with that. So to me, throwing a half set, full set, to me, I design these so you could just buy the full set. The flight on the short irons is not too high. Mm-hmm. It's very controlled. It's very good. But, you know, the middle irons are extremely easy to hit.
Nice.
Get up in the air. And so, like I said, you know, and some of this stuff, I do this for myself too.
Because,
yeah. You know,
you said that before. That's the best part. You know, it's like, I need some irons for myself.
Well, but you also want, you know, hey, I play at Chaska every week with some good players, and, you know, get a bunch of fittings from the players that play in our league at Chaska. And you see them on the golf course. You see them warming up on the range, and you sit there and you watch them, and it's like, man, you could be so much better with better ball flight. You know, people don't realize how high tour players hit the golf ball. You know, get people that walk in the bay and they hit it low, and you know, I've had some people comment to me on the LB ones. You know, these are great, but geez, by the time I get to the 6 iron, you know, the flight starts going. Well, yeah, it's not an easy golf club to hit.
Right.
You know, it wasn't designed.
You need a little bit of speed to hit those ones.
Yeah, it wasn't designed that way. You know, and that's why I think the perfect set is kind of a blended set of golf clubs. You know,
right.
Which you can blend these, but maybe down the road we have a blended set of golf clubs.
Maybe that's something that's in the works there in the background.
Maybe. You just don't know. But these days it's so different because, you know, your irons. It's like yesterday, who won the U.S. Becky Morgan, who won the U.S. Women's Senior Open. Okay, she had 6 woods, 4 wedges, 3 irons, and a putter.
Yeah, I mean that's a modern makeup.
That is a modern makeup for a moderate speed player.
Yeah,
and it's gonna.
Fred Couples is approaching that.
Yeah, you hate to say as somebody who's designed irons forever that irons are kind of going away, but they sort of are. They sort of have to be. You have to look at it as a designer and sit back and go, hey, what do I really need to make for somebody? Yeah.
So that's where these were born, was making this for just for more of the masses a little bit, but still with your design principles in there. So.
Right, and aspiring players, it doesn't have a ton of offset. It's still, it's got a little bit of offset, but you put it down and you're not going to feel like it's ugly.
Right, awesome. Well, golfers can get a look for themselves and the Bobka Proto Irons out on secondswing.com. If you have any questions, of course, you can let us know. You can contact Larry. He'll answer those questions for you. But the Bobka Proto Irons, go check them out. Designed by our guy, Larry, and few people on the planet have more experience designing golf clubs, building golf clubs for elite golfers than Larry does. So, Larry, thank you for joining. Some great insight into your new irons.
Always glad to be here.
And that was Larry Bobka, his new irons. I am intrigued. I got to give him a try because I played his L.B. ones. And I loved them, and now it's, this is kind of a, and he talked about a combo set possibility, which is definitely calling my name as well.
Yeah, I mean, they look sharp, and obviously you're seeing more and more, even at the highest level PGA Tour players, kind of playing these players' cavity, just getting that little, little more launch, a little more consistency, a little more forgiveness. The true traditional blade continues to become rarer and rarer, but I think potentially the combo of the L.B. ones with these is a fantastic idea. You don't play these in your higher irons, or longer irons, I should say. But yeah, looks great, and I can listen. Larry's one of those people I can listen to that guy talk about golf and golf clubs and everything for hours. So really appreciate him coming on. And then speaking of another person that the viewers love, Mr. Kevin Kraft, sat down with you. Back in July, so it's about a month ago, but kind of talking about kind of the uniqueness of a wedge fitting. Yeah,
so I think there were some questions we got on videos and some questions that our fitters generally get to, and I think there's just belief that, we can't do a wedge fitting because it's indoors and your wedge shots, you might have bunkers, you might have different lies around the green, and, it's tough with just a launch monitor there. And so I part of the reason was I just wanted to talk with him about it and have him kind of, set the record straight of all the benefits of the wedge fitting that we do, but then also why our process works. And so he's kind of outlines it and answers my questions, trying to kind of poke holes in a little bit of what we do. So this is Kevin talking about that and why it's important to make sure your wedges are fit. Welcoming back on the Second Swing Thoughts podcast, Kevin Kraft, Master Club Fitter, 3-time U.S. Senior Open qualifier. I didn't say that in the other 2 segments we recorded, so that's okay. Yeah. All right. We got to talk about a topic that's come up in some of the comments and some of the things that we've heard in doing what we do with social media is just wedge fittings, and in particular, I guess why it's important to do so even if it's indoors. And I think, obviously we. All of our fittings are indoors. Yeah. But I think when you're hitting full swings off of a mat, it makes a lot of sense still that you're going to take that on the golf course. You can hit the same swing, right? Your driver is going to be the same swing. Your irons are going to be the same swing. Things change a little bit with wedges where you might hit a flop shot, a pitch shot, a chip shot. It's not going to be just full swings with those clubs. Right. So dialing them in is a little different. And so I wanted to bring you on just to kind of clarify what the second swing process is, why it's effective, and why it's still important to make sure your wedges are dialed in, and how that can work with a player that needs to upgrade or is due for an upgrade.
Yeah. So, it is a little bit different doing wedge fitting indoors because you just don't see the turf interaction.
Right.
Right. So, in a perfect world, you're going to have some really nice grass to work off of and some different lies and bunkers and firm bunkers and soft bunkers, but we don't have that. So a great deal of what we do is conversation based. I'm going to get a baseline on a pitching wedge, and let's say we're looking to gap wedge, sand wedge, lob wedge set. We're going to find out what that pitching wedge loft is, and then we can kind of make talk through anyway what the right idea is going to be, whether we want to do 4-degree gap, 5-degree gap, 6-degree gap, whatever that is. Find out the way people play their wedges, right? So for most people, they're going to play a gap wedge as a more or less full swing or partial swing club. And we don't have much for grinds when it comes to those clubs. So
manufacturers taking notice of that trend of how they are used, and so there's not very many offerings for different grinds. It's more or less a full sole there.
Yeah, if you go with Vokey, you've got 8-degree or 12-degree in that 50-degree wedge, and so you've got a couple options there for the guy that's a little steeper or a little shallower. When we get into the reason this is all important is because these are the scoring clubs. I mean, these are the ones that, these are our green light clubs. These are the ones that we want to be able to attack the pin with and rescue ourselves if we have attacked a pin and we've missed.
Yes.
Right? So we want to be able to have the right tools for the right shots. And a lot of that is going to be determining what kinds of shots the individual is going to play around the greens. Do they play all of their shots with a square face? Well, that changes things drastically because you don't have to have a lot of grind on a club to make it really versatile and be able to open it up without leading edge coming up if they're never going to use that, right? But if you've got somebody that likes to chip with a 56-degree wedge, learning and finding out how they play their shots. Do they play their shots, toe down? Do they like to play little dead shots off the toe? Do they like to hit, get their hands low and open up and hit a lot of flop shots, right? We need grinds and we need bounces that are going to make that easier. Absolutely. So, asking people, conditions. So, in Maryland, Pennsylvania, where I live, we play in combination conditions. There's going to be days where it's going to be soft. There's going to be days where it's firm. What are the tendencies? Are we going to, if you miss with a wedge, do you miss heavy? Do you miss thin? And if you miss both ways, is there one that's a little more dominant than the other? How is your bunker game? How are your bunkers? Right? I mean, most of the courses I'm playing on don't have great bunkers, so that can have an influence on what we do with with what that primary sand club is going to be. Some people don't even use sand wedge anywhere but out of the sand, so then that really becomes the number one thing that we have to find out and act accordingly to. Do you use a lob wedge around the greens? How do you use that lob wedge? So through a series of questions and just kind of keep probing about, what they like, what they want for feel, what they want for look, what they want for versatility. We can put them in bounces and grinds that are going to help them.
Yeah.
And we can hear it to some extent on the mats, like
how the contact is made and where on the face there's a tendency maybe. And from that point, you can kind of alter there's also lie angle and stuff like that that are being adjusted, but also the bounce and the grind and how maybe the camber or the shape of the club is impacting it.
The hope is always that the individual is going to be able to feel some difference, but a lot of people can't.
Yeah.
So that's where having an ear for it is important. What sounds like it's coming through the turf, even though it's a mat, the right way. I had a guy on Monday, and we went through 10-degree S grind and 12-degree D grind, and what sounded best to me was the D grind. And when I asked him, he said that the little more bounce actually made him feel like he was going to get into and out of the turf better. Easy decision.
Which again, you can't see that.
No, you
on
can't.
A mat, but
you can't.
Some of the golfers are going to feel it.
Yep.
Or of course, there's also the 30-day play guarantee as well, where
so we do have to rely on that a little bit.
Yeah, because that happens. I mean,
it's going to be different going into turf than it is going into the mats. So if we have to make tweaks, we can always do that.
Yeah.
Obviously, we want to limit that as much as possible and get somebody into the right thing the first time.
Right.
So, combination of fitter knowledge and fitter experience and player knowledge and player experience, those two things can usually get people into the right stuff.
Now, this is kind of an off the wall question a little bit, but I think it might apply. So, in a wedge fitting, or with TrackMan, is there also a bit of you in the sense you have seen this player hit shots, their attack angle, and a little bit of that might influence a little bit of the grind and stuff that
Sure, yeah.
they're using.
That data is always helpful. If you got somebody that hits down on it hard, their divots are going to be big.
Right.
That's going to be one of the big questions that I'm going to always ask. Do you have a small, shallow divot, medium dollar size, bigger, deeper? If we're getting into that turf, we want some higher bounce. I've always said, you could put me on any country club's driving range with a 7-iron, come back in an hour, and you might not know that I was there. Give me a sand wedge, and I'll put in a new sprinkler system for you. So
Right.
I get really aggressive with the wedges. So while I'm a sweeper with the irons, I like to get into the turf. So I like, something like a D grind or something that's around 12 degrees.
Yeah. See, I'm with my 60 degree, I hit any and all shots. Where if it's not a full swing, I'm probably not taking a divot. I'm like clipping it perfectly. I'm opening the face a little bit and kind of coming shallow. I like to kind of take it upstairs if there's any type of need for it. If I feel like if there's anything looking at the shot, like I got to stop this quick, I do it by trying to open the face a little bit. But any full swing with any of my wedges, I dig in there. So there's not really a grind for that, but I'd go for as much versatility with my 60 as I can.
Sure.
And then, then I have a little bit of bounce as like a full swing, deeper level.
That's another thing that we
wedges.
we have to kind of talk out too. Is are we going to if you got somebody that plays a lot of shots around the green with both either a 54 or 56 and a 60 or 58, and they play the same kinds of shots, are you going to match up those bounces and grinds, or are we going to do something with a little variance, right? You look at Cleveland 588 wedges, and it used to be that guys would buy a 56 and a 60, and they'd get home and they'd love one and not like the other. Well, one's really high bounce and the other one's not. So, maybe there was a little too much of a dispersion between those two. But oftentimes, I like to give creative players two different, slightly different bounces and grinds, so that they have a little more playability. And the one that they're gonna play, the majority, I will probably tend to give them a little more bounce, just so that they can play a variety of shots out of the deeper rough and that kind of thing. So
because we have a pretty expectation of what a fairway is going to offer. I mean, I know there's different types of grass, but the lie that you get from a fairway from course to course is mostly pretty similar, but the rough can change quite a bit more.
Correct.
You could have very thick rough on one course. The next course, it could be pretty tame and not much there. Yeah. And so having versatility in some sense with that makes sense. But I just, I wanted to lay that out there, in that it's not just like a wedge fitting isn't just, hey, hit a few swings. Oh, that feels good. Okay. And I think there's there's a kind of a thought that that's what it is.
Yeah, it's
just
not.
because, you don't have bunkers to hit out of. You don't have rough to hit from, and you don't have especially greenside rough, or you're not hitting a bunch of like feely shots in the bay. It's a little bit different, and so but it's important nonetheless to get fit for those wedges and make sure that they whether it's 3 of them, whether it's 4 of them, whether it's 5 of them in this day and age. It's important to make sure they make sense.
First started fitting for scratch golf clubs back in 2009, I showed up and they put me through their process, right? I showed up with a 4-degree bounce lob wedge. They said I needed 12. Like, I had it all wrong.
Yeah.
As a full-time tour player, I had it all wrong. I was good enough to make it work, but since then, I mean, it's gotten a heck of a lot easier with wedges, because bounce and grind matters.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So the takeaway is bounce and grind matters. Number 1. Number 2, getting the right bounce and the right grind for your game is important as well. And you can do that even through a conversation with a fitter. Just by the fitter can learn about how you use your wedges, where you're missing, and what your goal is with your wedges. And from there, it can become a pretty good fit. And again, 30-day play guarantee. You get your clubs, go try them out on the course once or twice, see how they feel, if they're hitting the shots that you need to, and everything will work from that point on. If you need to make a tweak, make an adjustment, we can do that in our build shops.
Definitely.
So thanks, Kevin.
Sure.
Wedge fitting.
Yeah. Fun.
It's important, just like any other fitting.
It's fun.
At second swing. It's fun. Get dialed in. You're scoring clubs, so make sure you shoot better scores with wedges that fit your game. Thank you again, Kevin.
Sure.
that was Kevin Kraft talking wedges and the wedge fitting process at Second Swing. It's again, it's one of those things as a golfer, maybe from the outside, it's like, how do you do that inside, on turf? But I think he outlines it perfectly in that there are different ways to use the simulators to find, how someone's delivering the club, and you can make some decisions from there. Yeah,
I also think it's important. He kind of mentioned a lot of it is just, it's almost like an interview, right?
Yeah. How you use these wedges.
How do you use this? Because I think, yes, the numbers and the data are super important when it comes to a fitting, but also the feedback that the fitters get from the golfer, because you can't simulate feel on a simulator, right?
Right.
And what conditions are you playing in? If you're playing in Minnesota versus Arizona, you could have similar swings, but you're going to want different, it all depends on the type of sand you're using, the type of grass. Are you playing in a drier climate, wetter conditions? There's so many different factors. So I really appreciated him kind of diving into that aspect, because as someone who's done a fitting here at Second Swing, I think that's the biggest part, is you get to kind of give them your feedback, because ultimately they want to get you set up in something that performs, but also that feels good, looks good to you, ultimately, suits your eye and suits your game. So
yeah,
good stuff there from Kevin.
As it is with everything, getting fit is important, and it's going to help you, A, feel confident in your stuff, but B, you're going to be more technically sound with everything you do too. So, but yeah, as far as, like we always like to wrap with kind of what's on the YouTube channel, what's coming down the pipeline. We've got a very fun series that we're kind of relaunching. We used to do Get Fit Like a Pro. We kind of put it on the back burner a little bit. Now we're going to refire it up next week. So we have a couple of really special guests that joined us to get fit a couple of times, and that's a lot of fun. So that's the first episode, or first relaunching of it, is next Friday, September 5th. We have a very special guest. You might be watching him on your TVs a little bit this fall if you're a football fan. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be the big tease I'll share here in this episode. Yeah, really looking forward to that. Yeah, on the Second Swing side, like we said, L.A.B. new putter, Cleveland new wedges, plenty of new clubs. Obviously you can learn as much as you can from our YouTube channels, but also go and get fit. Got lots of great options, and make sure you check out our clearance event. Still one of our biggest sales going on throughout the month. I know we've got putters, wedges, iron sets, drivers, Cobra Dark Speed, Titleist TSI, really good performing clubs going for unbeatable values. So make sure you check those out today. Yeah, and subscribe to Smash It, the Second Swing YouTube channel. Subscribe to the Second Swing Thoughts podcast. As Sean said, smash that button. Do not just tap it on your phone. Make sure you smash it. Tell your friends. Tell everybody that the Second Swing Thoughts podcast, it's a weekly show. We have fun with it. We hope you guys too, and we'll see you next week. We'll see which one of us is more accurate with those Ryder Cup picks as well.